Welcome to Pub in the Desert, where we bring you honest, curious conversations about faith and the human experience. I'm Matthias Miller here with my co host, Kevin David Kritner. Before we dive in, I want to recap our three guiding principles. First, you don't need to be fixed, you need to be known. And we believe that love is knowing and being known. Second, we approach difficult topics with genuine curiosity. We're not here to win arguments, but to understand. And third, we don't come with preset agendas. We let conversations unfold naturally, and we follow where authenticity leads us. So go ahead, pull up a chair, grab a drink. Let's explore what union looks like with God, with others, and with ourselves. Now, uh, Kevin, you made a very dangerous statement just now. I made this passing comment saying that, or we could talk about how you can talk to
Yes.
Gemini about your health and come to absolutely hate it in your life. Um, and so the um, the rabbit hole that I went down last night was um, Jillian Michaels got was on the Jubilee show, which is just strictly entertainment that's framed as a debate. Like it's we all know what it is, but she was arguing with these folks about about body positivity, and one of the arguments that she made was that the people really benefiting the most financially from the body positivity movement are the big food companies. And
Shocking.
I know.
This
And
wasn't a
like
pure motive.
I, I, you know um she actually quoted some kind of insider information from somebody who works at one of these companies where it's like health at every size, or I don't even know, like, but for each one, each catchphrase, they had a corporate goal associated with it. I'm just like,
Right.
yeah.
Strange.
But what was fascinating was that some of the debaters were like, okay, yeah, well, there's not that much of a debate, and other debaters were like, well, there has to be something to debate about. Like, we can't just let you make a statement like this and not contest it in some way. I'm just like, guys, like,
We need to argue.
this is one thing that you guys could unite over. Like, you
Right.
should unite over.
We could
Um,
find some common ground here.
I'm also decidedly old because I totally don't understand language around weight, because that's a thing now. And I'll just go ahead and admit it now. I'm old. Um,
Welcome to the club.
welcome to the club. It's a long climb from here. Um,
There's a chair around the campfire for you.
and then I had Gemini do some deep research. I'd done this previously, and I started chatting with that, in that with Gemini in that thread, and like asking it questions, and it's like, um, yeah, like you should. I mean, it's all the interesting things. Like, what are the behaviors? What are the correlating behaviors towards weight loss, and health in general, and all these other types of things? And it's actually basically it's having enough. uh, Well, I mean, we can go down that rabbit hole, but it's really not that complicated. But it's basically creating enough structure in your life so that you're consistently reminding yourself to be aware and mindful of what you're putting into your body, and also, like, having structure for exercise. Like, it's like most things, it's not rocket science. um but then, what was it? Oh, then I started asking it questions about different foods, and it's like, oh, this is like a commonly accepted good food. What about this? And it's like, no, that's terrible. Like, you shouldn't eat that. I'm like, you should go. I mean, like, just take something simple. Like, okay, oatmeal for breakfast. Good idea? No, that's awful. Like, definitely not instant oats or quick oats or anything like that. Go steel cut or like whole oats, which you have to, you have to cook for 15 to 20 minutes to prepare. And obviously, you shouldn't be eating brown sugar with that either, because that's,
Right.
not good for you. Even though that's kind of the staple with oatmeal. And I mean, like almost everything, it's like, what's a nice thing to enjoy, or what's even not even a nice thing. What's even something that's semi-sanely considered moderately healthy, and it's like, no, that's awful. You shouldn't eat that. Like, um,
This brought up a memory for me. consistently throughout my childhood, and this is looking backwards, so it's probably blurred, but we would have for breakfast we would have white rice with sugar on it. That was like breakfast.
It's breakfast.
And I like it was just a normal thing to me. And I don't remember ever talking about it at school with friends or anything, but in my adult life, they people would be like, "What did you eat for breakfast?" And I'd be like, white rice with sugar." And then the appalled looks. White rice with sugar? How are you still alive?
What's wrong with you? Okay, but that's probably back. Okay, not to call you old, but this is probably from far enough back where white rice and sugar was actually less
White
refined.
rice and sugar.
Yeah,
It was back
exactly.
then those
Like,
things.
not like,
This was in the early 80s. So yes. I think the calling me old boat has sailed. It doesn't even affect me anymore. It's like, yeah, I got you.
yeah, okay, like fine. Like, at some point, it's just truth. Um, it was also very intriguing to watch how these people, different people, argued their points, because Jillian was very much like, here's the data, here are the studies, like empirically, like this is like studies show, like this is how things work, and they're like, and on the other side, it's like, well, okay, but can I tell you my story? And it's like
Yes.
these two worldviews colliding, where you have like the scientist and the artist of like,
Yeah.
and what I mean, this actually does raise a fairly interesting question, which is actually one that I struggle with fairly consistently in life. Is like, I think a lot of people struggle with, is like, here's the facts of the situation, and here are the humans involved,
Right.
and how do you reconcile that? Because the truth of the matter is, if you continue down unhealthy pathways, the probability of something bad happening to your body goes up substantially,
Right.
and yet
That's an undeniable truth.
it's an undeniable truth. And at the same time, you have like the whole, like, this is my story. What are my emotions? How do I prioritize mental health and physical health? Because it feels like I have to choose one or the other, which is perhaps a false dichotomy. But um,
Yeah. Well, there's this whole thing about flattening each other into two dimensions. Like you're this or
this is
you're
not a weight
that.
loss program, to be clear, right?
Yes. If you want a weight loss plan, go to Gemini and have a conversation with Gemini.
Gemini can flatten you into two dimensions. Go ahead. Sorry.
Right, right. Funny enough, some of the clips that have been released from the podcast this last week, one of them happened to be the conversation we were having about emotional pain and physical pain taking the same brain pathway. And you had mentioned something like you could take Advil for emotional pain. And then we just laughed because you're like, don't hear us say keep popping Advil. So we just keep coming back to this whole thing. We are
Yes.
not experts. We are not experts by
This is
any
not
stretch of the imagination.
this is not medical advice, legal advice.
No. Oh man, there's this guy who's on the radio out here. If when radio was a thing, I think it's still a thing. But he did like he was a lawyer and he had like the drive time talk show kind of thing. And he talked about current events and that kind of stuff. But he had this show on Saturdays. It was called Handle on the Law, and the tagline was "Marginal legal advice for free." Like, okay, perfect. Marginal legal advice for free. You're getting marginal life advice here for free.
For free.
Oh, it's striking to me like the flattening into two dimensions, healthy, unhealthy. Okay, I get it. There's the empirical data of what you should be eating, what you shouldn't be eating, all that kind of stuff. There's the personal experience of this is my story, this is my experience. And it's almost like we set each those things off against each other instead of them being part of the full complexity and reality of what it means to be a human being. Could you just sit across from somebody, hear their story, ask questions, be curious, and then walk with them as they figure it out? Or do you have to solve their weight loss issue for them?
Right.
And yeah, I released an article I think last week about flattening other people, about putting people into two dimensions. And there's one coming out this morning that's about flattening yourself. And that's the reason why you flatten other people. And I think the reality is like if we're afraid, be it health, be it relational, be it job wise, whatever it is, we have a tendency to compress everything into binaries and go, okay, it has to be this or that. And that seems to be a large conversation around this, especially in our world, that this health journey, whether it's mental or it's physical, whatever it is, like you get scared because something's not right. Okay. And
Mhm.
then we flatten it into it has to be this or that. And
Right.
then we run with whichever one seems more right.
Right.
And there's that attempt to fix ourselves.
Well, and there's legitimate. I mean, I think that the challenge with empirical evidence is that it's all probability driven, which
Right,
which really means that when you say it is definitively this way, it's more likely this way than not. Um, there are people who fall at the extremities of the body mass index who are genuinely healthy, um, and the BMI doesn't account for that. Just as an example, but the
right,
BMI is a great example of flattening into. You could even argue into single dimension, but um, where are you at in the body size relative to I mean body proportion really is what it comes down to in some sense.
right, right, right. And not only in health things, like think about, let's take it out a wider scope and look at climate change, the terror in our world over climate change. And you have people on this side who are like, the world is ending, da, da, da. And you have people on this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, and there's no like in between of complexity. You're talking about a dynamic system here that is constantly changing and constantly moving, and you want to flatten it into this or this. How is that even possible?
Well, I think one of the ways you deal with the complexity is that you find significant highest significant contributing factors and focusing on those.
You find the few that confirm your bias and you lock on to them.
Well, everybody else would do that. I wouldn't do that, Kevin.
Of course not. Of course not. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was speaking for me, not for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel vindicated.
That's what I do.
Right. That is okay, guys. Let it be known. This is what Kevin does.
Exactly. And you shouldn't care.
And you shouldn't care. Okay, so then here's the dangerous question with this. I was listening to a gentleman speaking last night, and he's talking about Jesus in the boat, and he shared the story of how when Jesus was in the boat, like in the Jewish culture, and this is all I'm just going to go ahead and say all secondhand. I haven't done any of my own research, and I certainly wasn't there, so I have a really hard time vouching for this. But in the Jewish culture, um, the real fear
Did you just
was
say I wasn't there?
yes, I did say that.
We just wanted to be known. Neither of
Yes,
us were there.
we're not. Um, there's another debate with Brian Johnson, the guy who's working to live, working on longevity,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which also is another rabbit hole that we're not going to get into. I'm not him, and I have not succeeded for 2,000 years. So but the idea was that the I'm really not going to be able to find my train of thought. His
I'm
point was,
sorry.
let me just get
My
to the point.
laughter is throwing you off.
If I would just make comments on point, I wouldn't have this problem. Um, but his point was that our fear in the storm is not the storm; it's the monsters beyond the storm, and it's the death on the other side of the monsters.
Right.
And the whole reason why Jesus came to show his power over death was to prove that even should the monsters get us, and even should we die. I just realized I have a little like step ladder in my office that I forgot to put away. That's not mine. Um,
Squirrel.
um, Squirrel. But even like even if the monsters get us, and even if we die, even then, he is still Lord, and he is still Savior, and he is still King,
Right.
and he still can redeem. But then here's and in that it's like, how many of us are believers and yet we're in the boat and we don't believe, we don't have
Mm,
faith. I mean,
right.
it feels like, if I'm brutally honest, like 90% of my faith journey is not faith.
Right.
And
And
so how
certainty,
is
the
certainty?
things I know.
So if you want to go into this binary black and white,
Mm.
I don't even know if I want to ask the question, but like, Christian or not,
Like as it relates to
as
faith,
it relates to we,
trust,
that's a very, okay, as it relates to a very strict binary question. Are you a Christian or are you not? Do you believe or do you not believe? And isn't there a journey? And I don't know. I don't, I'm not a, I'm looking at this strictly from a human experience perspective and perhaps less as a theological perspective. But as I've as I've observed the process of people coming to Christ, that is very much a process in many cases of discipleship and of moving towards an openness to that, to that experience. And that is, again, if we want, and even on the other side of coming to Christ, we like to take people's spiritual journeys and reduce them to,
a
are they a
moment.
Christian? A moment. Are they a Christian? Are they not? The downside is that many times it removes space for God to work as clearly in the people that we label as not. And it creates expectations and disappointment when people that we label as so do not live up to those standards of expectation. Now,
Right.
am I trying to say that faith in Jesus doesn't matter? Like, that we can't have assurance of salvation? Good gracious. Like, that's not
That's
what I'm
clearly
saying.
what I heard you saying.
Sure.
I
Perfect.
need you to clarify.
Thanks. Thanks, Kevin.
If you hear it through a certain lens, though, that's if you hear it through the lens of fear and certainty, what you just said is going to be very provocative
Right.
because it's not certain where faith has to come into play.
Well, I think that's the scandal of faith, isn't it? Like, that faith is really this bloody death to certainty, and the fighting, the need to know, and the surrender to something greater than ourselves,
Right.
namely God, that he holds us despite that,
All of it.
all of it.
Yeah. I mean, as you were talking about the guy speaking and the storm and the monsters and the death afterwards, like you could see that as big picture as life in general, like
Yeah.
living my life, and then there's the storm, and I face the monster, which is death, and then after that, what happens. But you could also see it as a microcosm within a life as far as spiritual transformation goes. Like
Right.
you're in a boat and you're rowing, and the seas are a little rough, but you're rowing and you're making progress, and then the wind kicks up and the storm happens, and the fears of the monsters and the death, and you didn't cause the storm, or maybe you did. You contributed to it. You certainly didn't cause it. You contributed to it, and then you have no choice but to batten down the hatches and go through this storm. And maybe there's a death that happens in that storm. And maybe there's monsters faced in that storm. And maybe you have to get to the point where it's like, whether I live, whether I die, it really doesn't matter because I know I am with him. Either
Yeah.
here in this life, or if this life is over, with him for eternity. Maybe that's what true faith looks like.
Yeah.
Actual faith,
Yeah.
not a verbal affirmation of what I believe, but an actual lived reality of what I know to be true based on my experiences. And I have faith in this thing.
Yeah.
Like Friedrich Buechner made this statement. I think it was him to check it. But he said something like, the one thing we absolutely owe to God is to not be afraid.
Huh.
And I heard that decades ago. And when I first heard it, I was like, I'm constantly afraid. Like, what? I'm letting you down, God. And as I wrestled and over the years and faced the storms and the monsters and the deaths and that kind of thing, what I'm starting to see is I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of the storm or the death or the monsters.
Yeah.
And it used to have to do with my ability to endure these things. But it doesn't have to do with my ability to endure these things. And it doesn't have to do with where I'm going after I die. It has to do with who is with me in the midst of the storm. That's been the massive shift for me.
One of the common outcomes of facing death is, or one of the outcomes, I think, common of facing death is the loss of the fear of death itself.
Right.
And I mean, there's a sense in which isn't this okay? I'm using this term as the not the you know not the smart one about these things, but isn't there a lot in which the Christian walk is basically exposure therapy, where Jesus takes us and walks us up to the very thing that we're most afraid of, and we find out it doesn't kill us, and He's greater. Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I had this conversation last night with a friend, and she was talking about how she recently got into there's a card game called Magic, and apparently like the decks have different colors. And this was the first time she was playing it, and it was online, and one of her friends was there kind of helping her go through it. And for her, the entirety of life, she's been deathly afraid of spiders, hates spiders. And one of the decks is green. People may know what I'm talking about, but one of them's green, and like the animal equivalent of the green decks is spiders. And so like this deck pops up and there's all spiders. She's like, no! And she looked at me, she goes, exposure therapy doesn't work. I'm like, fair, fair.
fair.
But what your point is so powerful there. Like, what if this life is simply just exposure therapy? Okay, you're afraid of these things, and we're maybe it's spiders, whatever, but maybe it's death. Maybe it's rejection. Maybe it's whatever it could be emotionally. And the Holy Spirit says, "Hey, let's walk through this one together. Let's
Yeah.
face this. Let's see what happens. Let's learn to trust each other here." Maybe it's just a long repeated cycle of learning to trust.
Well, and maybe part of this too comes back to our oft repeated conversation about grounding in reality. Because I mean, what is the monster? The monster is the thing that nobody's seen but is only imagined,
Yeah.
and is imminent and will come, and this is what he's going to look like. And it's intriguing that when we use mathematic algorithms to replicate communication, that we come up with something called hallucination, by which when we don't have a data source, our AI model will go make up stuff,
We'll create one.
which sounds strangely human.
Right. Interesting. It
Interesting.
sounds like the little kid in their bed who freaks out because they don't have their stuffed animal next to them, because it's
Exactly.
their source of comfort, because there are monsters in the dark out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
Disney has made billions off of that concept.
I don't
Monsters
want to be
Inc.
alone. Monsters Inc.
Right.
Wow. You could even, jumping back to the beginning of the conversation, um, besides the scientific engineering of foods to be addictive and making sure that potato chips have just the right amount of fat so you don't have to drink water because we wouldn't
Yes.
want you to stop. Um, like even that, even our food is architected to meet the need of comfort, of not being alone, of um, like how much musing, uh, how much of our capitalistic system really is fundamentally built around scratching that itch to make sure that you're not alone and you don't have to face anything hurtful.
And does that play into the proliferation of AI usage? I mean, there's obviously the business applications and that kind of thing, but there's also the companionship
Right.
application. And you want to, oh, it's so bad. You're talking to AI, all that kind of stuff. Okay, great. Why?
Right.
You have created a society of utter competition and comparison and one-upmanship and value and worth and identity and all those things. And then you wonder why people are feeling alone. So they can go to chat and have a conversation. They can go to Claude. They can go to Gemini. They can go to Copilot. They can do all these things too. Have a conversation.
Well, and I mean, add to this the once attention became a commodity to be traded based on supply and demand, and once we discovered that polarity, I mean, this kind of goes back to, the Joe Sugarmans and the why can't I remember this other guy? But I mean, the all the copywriters of like
Hmm.
years ago who kind of broke into copywriting. Um, when you discover that polarization is a compelling copywriting mechanism that's almost, I mean, there's so much of this that's almost like visceral. Um,
Yeah.
and then you try to maximize, you have a competitive attention economy and you try to maximize it in any way possible. And then you unintentionally inject polarity into the culture because
Yep.
all attention, that is the primary, I mean, that's one of the primary tools being used to garner attention. Because and it's broader reaching. It's far easier to say polarities. I mean, the nice thing about polarity is it reaches across both sides of the aisle. So you have the people who say, "Oh yes, 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 I agree with you," and then you have the other people who say, "Who basically, I hate you. I like this can't be true." Like, and so from that standpoint, fundamentally, polarity is, I mean, it is the mechanism that captures the attention. It does not unify, but it captures the attention of both sides of the camp, and has the ability to pull a larger percentage of the crowd than almost anything else.
Right.
But
Because what's the big picture goal?
who's
Bottom
big?
line.
Who's big
Like
picture?
as far as like the polarity, like
I mean,
stated or unstated, what's the big picture goal of polarity?
I mean, I think the big picture goal above all else is, I mean, clicks and views and eyeballs and attention.
Attention.
Yeah,
Attention. That's
because
all it
attention
is.
is a ends up being a commodity that can be traded in any capacity. Side note, there's an article done again, secondhand research. I haven't double checked it, but there's an article done by one of the newspapers, I don't remember which, about the number of fitness influencers who have sponsorships from big food companies.
Right.
So there's the case of if I can if I can create polarity, I can build attention
Hmm.
that I can then that has resale value to somebody who is looking for access to attention. Which means, as a side note, I mean, um, somebody, one of my friends was posting about some of the X accounts that are clearly bought, and you'll have different influencers who will all say similar things until somebody discloses that, yeah, actually, I got a request to make this statement for a certain amount of money, and I declined to make the request. I declined to make the statement. And so
Hmm.
this is how much I think the challenge has been that historically, in years past, paid media was, we're really going into like the social issues today, but paid media was the town square.
Hmm. The
And then,
agora.
yep. And then it, at some point, it became the newspaper.
Hmm.
And then we added radio, and then black and white television, then color television, and then social media. And so paid media used to mean print newsletter, direct mail, something like that. Paid media now is the person that looks to be an entertainer.
Hmm.
They are a paid media channel.
Right. Right. It's fascinating to me. Like we have these conversations about trusting mainstream media and that kind of stuff, and you're like, on a very fundamental level, if you look at it, these are corporations that own these media outlets.
Right.
What's the point of a corporation?
I would say profit, but that's not actually not true. It's return to the shareholders,
Yes.
perceived value to the shareholders. That is the point.
Yeah. Yeah, for a publicly traded company, that's it. That's its survival.
And that's not that is different from profit. Let's be clear.
You have to acknowledge that that's much different. So is there a bias in these corporations?
Please don't ask such difficult questions, Kevin. Are they
It's my
humans?
spiritual gift.
It's your spiritual gift. Are they God?
Right. There's a bias. What is going to put money in the pocket of the shareholder? Bottom line. So you want to talk about objectivity and reporting news and that kind of stuff? There's no such thing as news anymore.
Right.
There's no such thing as reporting the facts. It's all editorial. That's it. And if you can't recognize it, may want to sit down and just look at whatever your common news source is. If it's social media, God forbid, if it's mainstream media, if it whatever it is, read an article. Are the facts presented of what happened alone? That's it. Or are the opinions of the person writing the piece based on the facts? It's
Right.
like the movies that come out that say based on a true story. And
which
it's like
means
one small aspect within it is potentially true.
we kept the main character's middle name.
Right. Right. Come on. It's all editorial. And I have no problem if you present it as editorial.
Okay.
I have no problem with that whatsoever. Your opinion, your voice matters just as much as the next guy. No worries whatsoever. But if you come out and try and pretend like this is fact, then we have a problem.
Then we have a problem. I mean, this comes down to the endless optimization of all things. I mean, you look at uh, Robert Epstein's Google stories and related. If you go down some of those rabbit trails on some of the things he's experienced and dug into, the hyper optimization of everything to the advantage of a few is really ends up being quite distorted. It's interesting that our founding fathers had the foresight. I mean, the one element of power that they did not manage to create a proper check and balance for was the power that comes from capitalistic gain and large capitalistic entities.
Right? Yeah.
And it begs the question. I mean, in a lot of ways, the U.S. is like again, I'm not this major history buff, but it's like version 3.0 or 12.0 of whatever. And realistically, it's done very well. Um,
Mhm.
but what would version well, let's not go from 12 to 13. That just sounds abysmal. But let's go from like
Dangerous.
dangerous. I mean, what does version 4.0 look like? What if we could take all the lessons that we've learned from this experience,
Yeah.
what would it look like to have a system that helps create checks and balances against the undue hyper optimization of capitalism that
Right.
exploits ultimately at some point ends up exploiting humankind?
Yeah. Right. Recently, I purchased a t-shirt, and I'm in love with witty t-shirts. And the shirt has a characterized version of George Washington on one side and a characterized version of Jesus on the other. And the thought bubble on George Washington's side says, it's as if they didn't even listen. And then Jesus says, bro, same. If to our listeners, if you have not read George Washington's farewell address, so at the end of his 2 terms as president, he gives a farewell address. If you have not read that, go back and read it. It's easy to find. Just Google search it. George Washington's farewell address. He warns us against few things. He warns us against foreign entanglement, and he warns us against political parties.
Mhm.
This is in 1796, 95, 96. What issues do we have right now?
I mean, certainly not international entanglement, and certainly not political parties.
No, no.
Never,
We
never.
got bigger issues. But it made me think of it when you were talking about the capitalization of things. Foreign entanglement was absolutely going to happen when you go on a corporate model. Because when you tap a market, the well runs dry and you have to expand outwards.
Yes.
That's it.
Well, I mean, it's not that dissimilar from the hype train. I mean, this is I think this is the trap, and maybe this is maybe this is actually kind of the underlying thread under this whole conversation. And this is something I've wrestled with a little bit, and I haven't fully articulated. But the problem with the hype train is that you always need a bigger story to trump the last one.
Yes.
And so if you're attracting people based on hype, then there comes that point. And so if you're, and I have folks that my personal opinion in business that they've, well, there comes a point in which if you uh, if you start at a certain level and you say, hey, did you know that you can let's just pick something, mowing a lawn, um, or no, let's pick something else. I'm going to pick an example. My dad used to tell this story. Okay, my dad actually used to be a painter for a few years, painting houses. And
Gotcha.
so you could tell him, if you went to him and told him, hey, look, if you set up your equipment this way, you can save 20% on the time it takes to paint a house. That's credible.
Mm,
Most likely somebody just starting out in painting, there are tweaks and adjustments you can make to get that kind of a gain.
right.
Um, he also told the story of this guy who was an inventor and thought that we should be able to paint things just by basically having a big, like get a big semi-trailer container and like fill it with paint, dip whatever it is into it, and you should basically be able to instantly paint things that way. Um, it was a giant fail, but it's the there is a point at which when the level of ignorance and sophistication is low enough that you can yield insight that truly feels like it's groundbreaking.
Hmm.
And then you reach to a point of mastery.
Hmm.
And at the point of mastery is when you start hitting the limits of realism.
Right.
And there are no more silver bullets. There is no magic. It's hard work. It's all the stuff. I mean, it's the
Get your
stuff.
hands dirty.
Get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
So, what is it about this underlying pattern? Because this is what I'm curious about. What gets people stuck on selling hype? What causes them to blow past it once they start lying about the reality? When they
Hmm.
start when they hit the upper edges of at that point where there is no silver bullet anymore. It's
Right.
just it's really nothing like it's not that fantastic. Like you just got to do the work and grind through it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
At and they want to keep selling on hype. What
Right.
causes them to cross that line and to keep going? I think ultimately it's some kind of self-protection mechanism.
Mm. You asked me a question years ago, and I'm sure you probably remember the moment. Like, where do we go from here? What's next? Do most people stop here? And my response is, yeah, most people stop here. It's that point where you have to get your hands dirty. All the
Right.
modalities, all the techniques, all the putting the fire out is done. What's left? Now, this is where we get our hands dirty.
I
Get
mean, okay,
calluses, blisters, yeah, cuts, bruises.
this is the boring work of getting up every single morning and continuing to love people and continuing to excel at the work that you're doing and continuing to push against difficult problems and continuing to deal with the messes of life.
Yeah. If you expect success every time you get out of bed, you are going to be disillusioned. Disillusioned. There is, my brother and I were introduced to the game of golf by my dad and my grandfather. And so from the time we could walk, we'd go out on the course with my dad and grandfather Sunday afternoons. There's an air base here in El Toro that used to have a golf. It used to be an air base. Now it's a great park, but it was an air base, and there was a golf course there. And my grandfather was in the Air Force, so he had access to it. So we'd go out there and walk around and play, and we'd get to hit the ball every once in a while. So from the time we were very little, we know the game backwards and forwards. Know the right thing to do, know the wrong thing to do. We both are significantly average golfers. Been doing it our whole life, all that kind of stuff, you know? And when I'm watching YouTube, the algorithm knows what I'm trying to get at. There's this delusion that I'm gonna be better, and it will sell all the tips and tricks.
Yep.
And that's the marketing aspect of it, right?
Right.
That's the magic, the Jesus magic part of the whole thing. Like, use this grip trainer and it will change your game immediately, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
That's not the fascinating thing to me. That's human nature. The fascinating thing to me is my reaction to it.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. That's gonna fix everything. The amount of money I have spent on training aids over the years is embarrassing to even mention. And has it made me any better? No. Because the only thing that is going to make me better is being at that driving range, hitting ball after ball after ball, getting calluses on my hands and blisters and sore muscles and learning to do it and feeling what it's like to do it the wrong way and feeling what it's like to do it the right way and just that hard work. And I don't think it's any different in life matters,
Right.
emotionally, spiritually, physically. Like we could take Ozempic. Go back to the original conversation. And there is a medically necessary certain set of circumstances where that is very, very helpful, understandably so. But is that actually doing the hard work? And I'm not shaming anybody who's taken that path because that's between you and your doctor and God and how that works out for you. It may be medically necessary, but the reality is it's a silver bullet. And we love the silver bullet. We're searching for the silver bullet. We need the silver bullet. And there is no silver bullet as far as faith goes.
Right.
You got to experience the storm. You got to see the monsters. You got to experience the death. And you got to find out what's on the other side.
Right.
And I think that's what's most dangerous about charismatic theology, as I've been exposed to it. I'm not saying blanket statement. It really gets you wrapped up in the idea that there is a magic bullet.
Right.
And then on the other side, the opposite side of that spectrum, I would probably say Reformed theology. Reformed theology is a fear-based theology, in my opinion, that always has to create a new, meaner, bigger, nastier monster for you to be afraid of to keep you in line. So whether it's Bethel, that's the big new mean monster that you have to be afraid of, or it's Hillsong, or it's I'm just seeing the most recent. I'm referencing the most recent videos I've seen,
Yep.
or the heresy of this, or the heresy of this. It's all manipulation. It's avoiding the storm and the monsters that has to occur inside us. That's it. We've talked about orthodoxy before, Chesterton's
Yep.
book. Did you read Heretics?
I started on it and I need to put it on my list because I started on it and I never completed it.
It is I'm in the process of kind of listening through it and taking notes now, but it is a fascinating book. I mean, just the prologue in the first chapter where he goes into defining what a heretic is. It's fascinating in our current world.
In our current world.
And he essentially comes down to the fact that in our current world, a heretic is somebody who disagrees with you.
That's strangely modern for, I mean, I know he's not that, that far in the
Not too
past,
far
but
back, but yeah. It's simply, and I'm paraphrasing what he says. He says it way more eloquently, but in the paraphrasing, it's somebody who disagrees with me because they
But
scare me. And so it must, if there's fear in me, I can't own the fear that's in me and figure out why I'm afraid of that thing. You have to be the cause of my fear. And so I have to destroy you.
right,
We started
yeah.
out talking about your youngest daughter having a rough night
Yep.
because she couldn't find her stuffed animal. And my comment to you was like, we don't get much more sophisticated as time goes on.
No,
But
don't
it
take this
really
away.
is, yeah, don't take this away from me. I need this. Okay, if you need it, okay. I get it. That's no problem because you're a human being and we all have things that we need to hold on to. Get it. But it gets really dangerous when don't take this away from me. And if you try to, or if you disagree with this, then you're the enemy. You're evil.
Well, and I feel like much of human life and much of the faith journey is about negotiating our little stuffed animals. Like,
Right.
I like it. I want to keep it. I also want to learn to live without it. I don't know if I can. Maybe I can for a little bit. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
We're having a family get together tonight because my niece is in town and her boyfriend slash probably soon to become fiance is in town. And so getting together for tacos. I heard tacos. I'm like, I'm in.
yep, it's easy.
And I can guarantee you that there will be three stories that will be told at some point in the gathering tonight because they're the same three stories that are always told. One of them is about when I was a little one, really little. Um, the pacifiers, babies have the pacifiers and that kind of stuff. I was attached to it. I was attached to it. I wouldn't let it go. And my mom had decided that it was time to let it go. And so we were out to eat at like a local burger joint kind of thing. And we had taken it out of the table or taken it out and put it on the table while I was eating, that kind of thing. And then I forgot that it was there and got up and walked out. I think I was a toddler. I don't remember. Old enough to walk. Doesn't matter. Walked out and left it there. My mom's like, "Ah, this is the opportunity." So she like put the trash together, threw it away. I lost my mind. Or how the story goes. I don't remember it at all. But lost my mind because I needed that. And was it developmentally time for me to let that go? Sure, probably. But could you have explained that to me at that point? No. There was no negotiating with this terrorist.
It, isn't that the problem with being developmentally ready? Is that it's only obvious externally and not internally, not to yourself.
Right.
And isn't that the biggest frustration?
Right.
There could also be a book of all the deceptive ways that parents have gotten their kids to get rid of their passies, they
Of course.
pacifiers. Um, the other two words that keep ringing through this whole thing in my mind is the idea of secret knowledge.
Mm,
Like there's this human lust for secret knowledge. Like if I can just know the magic thing that nobody else knows, then I will know, or maybe somebody else knows something. And genuinely, there's value in learning, but there's something about this silver bullet type of learning, like this thirst for secret knowledge. It's like if I could just figure out what pick the avenue. What did this person do to get rich? What did this person do to lose weight? What did this person do to get their miracle? What did this person do to
right. There's
whatever
got to
the
be a formula.
there's got to be a formula.
Yeah. Right. And I'll go to that person. Let's say you are the person with secret knowledge. Matthias is the get rich secret knowledge guy. And yeah, and I really want to be rich.
Right.
So I go to you and say, teach me. And you do. You teach me what you know. Okay,
Right,
awesome. And then I don't get rich. Do I look at you and go, you may be a snake oil salesman? Or do I look at you and go, what did I do wrong?
right.
Which one's more dangerous? Which response? To the individual human being.
Well, I mean, can I propose like a third
Yeah, please.
solution?
I don't want to flatten the conversation into
I mean,
binaries.
I mean, think about the variables that are at play in any situation. So let's talk about that. What are the variables? Me versus you. Um, let's go into the subset of the variables of me versus you. Personality, however you want to define it. You and I have we have similarities and we've got fairly vast differences.
Hmm.
That's a variable you have to account for.
Right.
Um, there's skill set and experience. That's a variable you have to account for.
Hmm.
There's people and opportunities that I have available versus what you have available. May not
Right.
be good or bad. It's just different. You have to account for that.
Hmm.
So there's personal variances. Then there's more broadly situational variances. There's timing. There's like there's the amount and length of time of effort required. There's the compounded learning that has to happen. There's just the straight up things beyond your control that fall into your laps. Like it is not strictly controllable.
Right.
You can control the part that you can. So if you got to that point, the I think the honest question would be maybe three questions. What are things about myself that I did not what are things about you that you did not disclose? What are things about me and my journey that I did not disclose? And vice versa, that we did not think to ask each other. And how did we fail to account for those differences?
Right.
And if you really want to be honest, you have to slow the whole thing down, way down. And you have to, I mean, I, if you really want to take an engineering scientific type of approach to it, maybe that's not the approach you want to take, but you have to slow it down and you have to look at it from those angles.
Are you daring to suggest that there's infinite complexity here?
Um, there's pretty near infinite complexity.
And at some point, you have to look at it and you have to see it as a we situation. Like you said, the three questions, those are all we questions.
Yeah.
What was I not aware of or I didn't disclose? What were you not aware of or you didn't disclose? And then the each other aspect of it. There's infinite complexity there. But that's not what happens most often. It falls into that binary. You're evil, you're a snake oil salesman, or you're ultimately good and there's something I missed.
So I have a friend of mine who's just brilliant at succinctly giving sound advice. And he's got a fairly high batting average and shoots straight and shot. Um, you'd have a very different experience working with him. Good, bad, whatever, don't know, different. Um,
Mhm.
I think one of the reasons why discipleship and apprenticeship, um, I was actually apprenticed into my career. Um, and that's how my first boss built his team. It was all through apprenticeship. Wouldn't trust
Wow.
college to educate his engineers. He wanted to do it and did
Wow.
he taught at college level computer science classes, and so I mean, he was competent, he was sharp, he sometimes annoyingly sharp, but um, frustratingly intelligent,
Frustratingly.
frustratingly good instinct. Um, Maybe there's a reason why that model. Maybe is it possible? I'm just hypothesizing here. Is it possible that that's the only model that has sufficient bandwidth for true life transformation that allows us to see enough complexity in each other's lives to do that? And is it possible that books, as wonderful as they are, sermons, as wonderful as they are, mentoring and coaching calls, as wonderful as they are low bandwidth ways, some of them more effective than others. Group programs, if you've ever been part of that, for generally group programs are cattle shoots for mass, you know, processing.
Right.
Um, it's not, don't take that too far. You'll get a really dark view of group programs, but um, the, the further reduces the bandwidth.
Right. Right.
Maybe, maybe that's why family matters so much, is
Right.
because there is sufficient bandwidth for transformation to happen. Maybe that's why church is supposed to be like family, so that you actually have sufficient bandwidth so that you do life together. If you truly wanted to get rich, like isn't I have actually extended this offer to multiple people, and it usually ended badly, and I've generally quit making the offer, but I have offered to bring other people under my wing and say, let's go do this together.
Right.
And in one case, one guy, um, I don't know, he didn't hold up his end of the deal. It's fine, whatever. I
Mhm.
actually sent a client his way who came back to me. I mean, whatever. I'm not. Other just Others have just disappeared, moved on, whatever. It doesn't. But I don't think it's a model that generally works. I don't know why, but I think if you had to find a model to do that, can you find somebody legitimately that you can walk alongside on a consistent basis that you
Right.
respect and admire? And can you learn from them what they do well and what they don't?
Right. Well, the fascinating thing, like the point you're making, is the way education was handled from the beginning of time until relatively recently. Let's look at an example. Let's look at the cathedrals in Europe that were built almost 1,000 years ago that still stand and are beautiful. What architecture program did those builders graduate from?
Yep.
It was all mentorship and apprenticeship. The people who wrote our Constitution, primarily James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, mostly Madison. He's a lawyer. What university did he go to prepare for this?
Yeah.
He was mentored. He was apprenticed for a very long time from his earliest ages. It was being around somebody that you can grow and learn from, not sitting in a classroom learning to memorize certain things.
I got I got to read this. This is one of my
Yeah.
favorite essays by Paul
Mm,
Graham, from Y Combinator, venture capitalist. He says practically every 15th century Italian painter you've ever heard of was from Florence, even though Milan was just as big. People in
mm,
Florence weren't genetically different, so you have to assume there was someone born in Milan with as much natural ability as Leonardo.
mm,
What happened to him?
mm.
If even someone with the same natural ability as Leonardo couldn't beat the force of the environment, do you suppose you can? His point being, one of them, or one of my takeaways, perhaps. I know he's centering this more around ambition,
Mhm.
but to your point, there was a communal learning, doing life together, learning from each other, progressing together.
Yeah. It has to be communal. It has to be union. It has to be a relationship. That's the design. It brings me back to Genesis. There's this line that has always profoundly struck me. That Adam walked with God in the cool of the evening through the garden. Could you imagine what those conversations were like? Man, what was happening there? Adam, I'm sure, had all sorts of questions. And I'm projecting onto him because I would have all sorts of questions. But like that, just walking with him. Or in the Hebrew scriptures, like Proverbs, like, talk about these things as you walk down the road with your children, like those encouragements. Like
Right,
that's what we're talking about.
right.
Right.
There's there's something interesting here. We've talked on the podcast about roundtables. Um,
Hmm.
the podcast has a little bit of a hat tip towards, C.S. Lewis and the Inklings and those.
Yeah.
Um, we've seen a lot of ways where community, or I have at least seen, been part of ways where community has become more, um, well, let's say it like this. The definition of community is, or the etymology of the word is if effectively with walls. Um,
Hmm.
and those walls can either help or hurt.
Mm.
Um, we've seen the misuses of community in that sense. Um, but what does it take? I'm reflecting back on previous life experiences. You guys are really getting a ramble here. Um, I was one of the early members and was actually on the board of a rural, one of the, I think the first rural co-working, first co-working space in our town. Um, and the original community built centered around that was extremely entrepreneurial, getting together for Friday lunches. And most times I was kind of annoyed. Like, guys, let's not like, what's the point of lunch? Like, just go get stuff done. Like, what's the point?
Right.
But in Elon Musk says this is another uncensored, comment, but he says the nice thing about being famous is that when you sit next to somebody and don't have a conversation with them, they assume that they're the problem. Um,
I haven't heard that before. That's great.
I would like to think that I'm bored in conversation because of the other person. I'm not rich or famous enough to be able to legitimately
You're
have other
right.
people assume that.
We
Um,
need to work on that.
we need to work on that. Uh, but there was a sense of community there. Like we're in this together. Like pitch competitions. Like what are you working on? Let's celebrate this cool thing that happened. And then invariably, some people would take off, some businesses would take off and grow, and others wouldn't. And you know, that has its own unique dynamics. But what does it look like to have? There's a reason why partnerships work. There's a reason why partnerships fail. Partnerships work because you have people who are doing it together. Partnerships fail predominantly because there's always somebody looking to measure what somebody else is putting in and what somebody else is getting out. And like
Yep.
that's
Of course.
number one reason why they fail. Like,
Yeah, of course.
but have we stopped short? Like is there something more in this conversation? Like what does it look like? What should it look like? What context? What frame? Like do we need what does it look like to do community more deeply than just these low bandwidth ways that we've experienced them?
It's fascinating. I I heard this philosopher who practices as a psychologist recently, and somebody asked him, with all the mental health struggles we're having in our world, and depression, anxiety, suicide, all those kind of things going on, he goes, what are we missing? What is not being addressed? That it's as if he had thought about this a lot. He's a philosopher. He said there's two things missing. Three C's. Sorry, three C's. Curiosity, community, connection.
Mm.
We deal with those three things. 99% of all human issues are going to go away. He made this fascinating statement. He said curiosity he called the foundational one. That was an absolute essential for every human being to be curious, because that will lead you to the truth. Community, because you have to have a place to be able to discuss that truth. And connection, because there will be differing opinions within that community, but can you still connect even though you might disagree?
Mm.
That was pretty profound what he said. And he said, community without connection strikes at the heart of belonging, being known, acceptance. So I have this, and I immediately my head went to churches, where it's so massive. There is a community there. Certainly, there's a place I go, and there's rituals that I engage with. But if there's not connection, the immediate problem is going to be isolation, loneliness, and then the psychological outcomes of those things.
Sure.
And he wasn't specific about those. And he said connection without community leads to a fishbowl type of environment. This is just us. We know the world. We've got our thing. Everybody else is wrong. And he said,
Because it excludes disagreement,
exactly. It excludes every other viewpoint.
right?
And so his idea was you had to have curiosity, bottom line. You have to be a
Sure.
curious person, bottom line. And then that will lead you to community. And from that community, there should be connection. That's the healthy path for every human being. And I sat back and I was watching. I was like, wow, he just took Freud and Jung and all Skinner and all of these psychologists over the years and philosophers, and he boiled it down to the three C's. It's really simple. And then I started to think about, okay, like, is there foundational understanding for this in Scripture?
Hmm.
And there's infinite foundational understanding for this in Scripture. I promise you. Go wrestle. I'm not going to give you what I found. Go wrestle with what that looks like. Community, connection, curiosity within Scripture. See what you find there. I think you'll come to the conclusion that that is how we were meant to live, and that's how a healthy human being will view life through the lens of curiosity, community, and connection.
It would be very interesting. This would be a very interesting lens by which to look back at past experiences as well.
Yes. What was missing?
What was missing? Where was it strong in curiosity? Where was it lacking? Um, or which of these were stronger? Which of these were weak? Looking at it now, um, yeah.
It's kind of funny. Within my classroom, from the first day, I preach that there's three rules. And the three rules are don't make excuses, don't give up, and do the next thing in love. Those are our three rules. And so now we're three-quarters of the way through the year. So all I have to do is turn my head to the side and look at somebody, They go, I know I'm breaking rule number two. And quite often, like I'll be like, I know I'm breaking rule number three. But we have this community that's developed within the walls of this classroom that we have a shared ethos of how we're approaching things.
Yep. Right.
And I think that builds connection. If we can be vulnerable and say, I'm breaking rule number three. So yesterday, one of the kids, he's an elite baseball player. He plays travel ball, all that kind of stuff. He had a tournament over the weekend, and so I was asking him like, "How'd the tournament go?" He's like, "Ah, it went okay. We got murdered, a few times." And he goes, "I want to tell you about something." I'm like, "Okay." He's a catcher, and he says like, "I almost got kicked out of the game." I was like, "What? What happened?" He had gone up to bat, and he had struck out on a pitch that he didn't think was a strike. So he was frustrated by it. And so he's behind the plate the next inning, and the pitcher throws a pitch, and he thought that it was in the same exact position that the one the last inning he got called out on. Same position. He's like, frustrated, like that was a strike for me. Why isn't it a strike for him? And he starts mouthing off to the umpire. And the umpire goes, I don't want to hear another word and you're out of here kind of thing. And this kid's response was, which word do you want? And I had to keep myself from laughing because I could see myself doing that. And before anybody pointed out, this is in front of the whole class, 20 people in there, and me, one of the whole class. Before anybody got to say anything, he goes, I know I was breaking all three rules. He's like, but I couldn't stop myself. I'm like, I get it. I've been there. I was about to laugh, Logan, because I could see myself doing the exact same thing. But it's created this community and this
Right.
connection within this classroom, and I think it's a very powerful thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think my context for much of community did not have curiosity at its central point, and it did not have at its central point agreeing disagreeably.
Right,
It was agreement at any cost. Um,
right.
and and so for a um, I think, man, there's so many contexts. Man, this goes so far, but um, that has to be embedded into the fabric of the community for that for it for it to be to persist.
Yeah.
Um, there has to be something within the fabric of along with that inherent in that it's kind of an outworking of that voices can be heard, that that we do the curiosity is in pursuit of objective reality from God's perspective,
Mhm.
understanding the world that we live in, understanding each other. That community inherently, and maybe this is part of it. Does it not seem true then? Is it not likely then, if these are the things holding us together that we need, doesn't it make sense that at any given point, any two of these are likely to be at odds?
Yeah.
Um,
And maybe that's the storm, right?
Maybe that's the storm. Hmm.
At any given time, any of these two could be at odds. And how do I walk through that? Do I walk through it or do I go around it?
Right.
There's this psychologist. He's out here in LA. He's a pretty famous guy. He's written a few books. His name's Phil Stutz. And he was trained as a psychoanalyst and in New York City. I forget what university he went to. It doesn't matter. Um, but a few years into his career, he's like, we're not helping people here. Our people are not getting better. And so he had to start, he kind of created his own way, essentially. He used the psychoanalytic model as the framework, but then kind of made it his own. He's a fascinating dude. There's documentaries about him on Netflix. Um, one of his clients is the actor Jonah Hill, and he actually made a documentary about his time with Phil, and it's fascinating to watch. Anyways, but he has this visualization model that he uses a lot because he knows that we as human beings love story and picture and that kind of thing. And we've been talking about the storm. He has this methodology that he uses. He goes, okay, picture the problem as a gray, dark cloud, as a storm, and you step up to it and you say, bring it on, and then you step into the storm and you feel it, and then you feel yourself come out the other side and you see the light. What is that but a retelling of the Jesus on the boat story?
Yeah.
He's not doing anything new. He's just presenting it in a way that his clients can understand and wildly successful by all measures. What if that's part of what it is? What if what keeps us from making excuses, what makes us quit, or what makes us avoid doing the next thing in love is the fear of that storm, of that cloud, whatever it may be. It could be a relationship, it could be a job situation, it could be whatever it is. What if it's simply just the fear? And I know that's not simple, because fear is a very dynamic, complex thing, but to
Right.
state it, that that's what keeps us from entering the storm, facing the monsters, allowing something to die, and coming out the other side into the light.
Mhm.
What if that's it? And even if you're not willing to take those steps yet, I get it. Okay. But could you let the foundational center point of curiosity allow you to engage with that dynamic slowly but surely over time? And do you have the space to be able to do that
Right.
within your community?
Right. There's a sense in which this is all strictly made up and not thoroughly thought through, but in which curiosity, man, this is almost cheesy to say. Curiosity creates the compulsion to explore. Community gives you the courage to step
Mhm.
in, and connection gives you the comfort in the midst of the storm.
I don't think that's cheesy at all. I think that's just brilliant. Because in our self-made world, self-sufficient, I did this on my own. It is the stake in the heart of the vampire, of the bootstrap, pull yourself up by the bootstraps ethos. It's a false narrative we've been sold. You can't do it alone. I think it's the antithesis of the ethos of our world.
Okay, but like, why in like stories of Beowulf, why do so many heroes go alone?
Oh, fascinating, right?
Is that just an act of utter desperation? Is that an ideal that we hold?
Mm. What I see happening there, and this is just my interpretation, is those stories are mythologizing that experience that we talked about, where you've done all the work, you've done the community, and at a certain
Right.
point, I have to make these decisions.
Right.
St. George facing the dragon. We've done everything we could as a community. Now this is my dragon to slay. That's what I hear being mythologized there.
So then where is the re-entrance of community after that stage? Because there's clearly a sense of formation. Okay, let's pick Jesus. He's living with his parents, he's learning the trade, he's doing all the things that he's doing, arguing with the debating with the teachers, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Disappears for 40 days
Mhm.
and then comes back. So there's
Yeah.
some sense in which like there's this, he has this wonderful moment where like this is my beloved son, and then this is I gotta do, this is now my journey. I have to go walk it. And
Yeah.
then he reintegrates community.
Hmm.
And then right before his death, his community falls away, not by his own doing. It's just, and then it's like, I guess I'm going to have to walk this alone.
Yep.
And then he does, dies, rises again, and there's a reassembly of community. It's interesting now that I'm articulating this that oftentimes this is, oh gracious, and I've seen this in my own life. The dying is the reorganization of community.
Yes.
It's like for whatever
Well, think about
reason,
it. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, please. For whatever
well, I mean,
reason.
for whatever reason, the community that's around me is not supporting me in, or what it's, I don't even know what the reason is, but I need a change of community in some capacity. And the only way that happens is through a death and rebirth of some kind. And then there's that messy middle ground where you're wandering through the desert yourself and like, where are my people?
Yeah. Well, look at the male initiation rites. Historically, ancient cultures, even up to this day. I was listening to this story about this Vietnamese guy. He was a guide to the American Army in Vietnam, and he started to tell his story, what it was like to grow up in his village, and the highest thing you could be was a hunter. And his rite of passage was you had to go out into the jungle and you had to kill one of three things. And then if you did that, then faced death. You faced that rite of passage and you came back into community and you were embraced. There was a new community. There was a new role for you within that. Maybe that's a deeply human thing that has to happen, which is completely and utterly missing in our Western culture. We think college is that coming of age story. No, it's not. It's just when you're outside the control of your parents. And some never do that. They stay at home. It's not a coming of age thing. You're not facing death there.
There's nothing, I mean, I think the entrepreneurial journey in my mind, probably most, I mean, that's what I'm most familiar with perhaps, but most closely models that, but even climbing the career ladder, like what is that? I mean, I suppose for some people that genuinely they do have that kind of an experience, but that's not how the career climbing is.
No, no, it's not. And so maybe that's something that's missing within our communities.
Well, one of the things that I'll observe as well is that money has become the substitute for these experiences. So
Mhm.
if you can afford to be in the room, then you're in the room. And
Mhm.
money becomes the proxy for having had these experiences.
Right.
And what you find is that money is a very bad proxy for some experiences, and it's a very good proxy on your ability to profit. I mean, it's
What we
not
come to find is the accumulation of money is our way of avoiding these type of experiences.
okay. So now, wow. So then, one of the questions in terms of community, actually, this is really interesting. A lot of church groups started after a shared experience, or I say a lot. Some denominations, some church groups, some individual churches started after a shared experience of a falling out. Um, so maybe one of the questions to explore as you're looking at community is what is the pivotal kingpin moment that is defining what is my falling out? What is my desert experience? What is the defining moment? How do I articulate that? And then that becomes the lens for who are the other people? Like maybe that becomes the litmus test for the community that you
Yeah,
surround yourself with.
right,
Hi, how are you? Have you had fill in the blank? Did you did you
right.
did you just about die at sea?
Yeah. Did you almost get eaten by a lion?
Right.
Okay, we can be friends.
Have you been almost bankrupt? How close? Um, what's
Yeah,
the most money that you lost in a business deal? I'm not saying these are like legitimate, like whatever. Like what price did you personally pay? At what
yeah,
price? What personal price did you pay to maintain your own integrity in
right,
a situation?
right,
What was that like?
right.
Wow. Okay, Kevin, your job is to title this. What's the title? No, genuinely, you do a good job finding the themes in the conversation. So I'm curious.
I mean, this whole thing seems to be like the underpinnings of death and rebirth.
Yeah.
The whole thing. In a lot of different ways, in a lot of different avenues and circumstances, situations, but it's just death and rebirth. And what do you need around you in the death and rebirth process? Well, the three C's.
Yeah.
The three C's.
What is
There you go, Haley.
there you go, Haley. What is oh, I gotta wind this down because I've got a client who's waiting for a call. But um what is hospice if not what is it that you need in this moment? What is it besides the logistical, let me poke you with this needle because
You're
the
sick.
temporary pain will help your in your condition. What is it besides the family gathered around the bedside that says we're here, we value your who you are, who you've been, you as a person, the comfort, the courage to face death, um, the openness to walking through an experience that 99.9% of the world only walks through once. Um,
Right. Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
I just wanted to end it on a bright note. So
I mean,
that's
yeah, yeah, real upbeat. Yeah, yeah.
Real upbeat.
Rainbows and butterflies here. You know, the funny thing is before you even said hospice, my mind was already going there. You spoke the words and I was already thinking. I don't know if that means we just have morbid fascinations, the same morbid fascination or what, but
I
that's
mean,
where it went.
I don't think that would be a wrong conclusion. Well, to be discussed, spiritual hospice could be another book or series or podcast title.
Right? Don't tempt me with a good time.
Oh, goodness. Wow. All right. Well, to all of you guys listening in, you guys are wonderful. Thanks for going on this journey with us. Hopefully, you guys don't get whiplash from this particular. It's like we had this nice focused topic for a few, and then it's like every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and like here's the whiplash version.
I
Like
love it.
we really tried, but then we just gave up. And so we're not going to
Yeah.
make excuses. We're not going to give up, and we'll do the next podcast episode in love. So
Yes.
anyway, more ADD moments. Thank you guys for joining us. If you just stumbled across us in your journey, you can find us in all the places. And we would love to hear from you. You comment on or engage with us on Substack in particular. We're probably most active, and we'd love to hear your input and your feedback. And Kevin, it's always a good time.
It's always a pleasure.
All right.
Until we meet again.
Until we meet again.
Bye.